Greetings! Once again, it is I, your host, Robert Meyer Burnett, for this, the latest episode of Living the Lucky Tiger Life. And once again, I've got a great guest. I've got James Hills from the mantripping.com blog, one of the most amazing, informative blogs you can find on the web, if in fact you are a lucky tiger man. And the impresario of that blog is Mr. James Hills himself, and I've got him once more today. So let me introduce you all to Mr. James Hills. James, how are you, sir?
Hey, Rob, I'm doing great.
You know, I don't think there's any man alive that at one point in their lives has not dreamt of either owning a Corvette or driving a Corvette. And of course, Corvette is about to introduce something very exciting. They're bringing back something from my childhood, probably your childhood too, that was the stuff dreams were made of. And you, sir, not only did you get to see the rollout of this thing, you got to sit in it, you got to experience it. What was this great thing? Tell us all about it. How did you get there? How did you get to sit in it? Tell us the tale.
Chevy's been a great partner of mine. I really like the guys. They've transformed the company a lot in the last few years from, quite honestly, a company where I owned a Chevy maybe 10 years ago, and when I was sold it, I said, you know what, I am done with this brand. I will never buy a Chevrolet again. But they've really turned the company around, and one of the examples of it is the new Corvette C8, which actually has been a dream of the designer since, I think it was the 60s when they first launched the first Corvette. And so I got an email and said, would you like to come up to Tustin, California and see the new Corvette? And to be honest, I didn't think I was special enough to be at like the event. I thought it was just going to be a mall thing where it's like, oh, here's the Corvette, look at it. But but as I realized, like, holy crap, they're going to be. They unveiled it in this giant blimp hangar, and I don't know if you guys have ever been in a blimp hangar or seen like Goodyear blimp from like thousands and thousands of feet away, but they're really freaking big airships. It's unfathomable how big these things are. Well, anyhow, that's the venue that they had for the C8 launch. I have never seen so many grown men so excited to see something. And I've been privileged to do a lot of really cool stuff. I mean, that's, I've been very blessed. But to see guys from, 20-year-old YouTubers that were driving, Lamborghinis and Ferraris and Alfa Romeos and stuff to, 85-year-old guys who are like, oh, back in my day. And to be fair, there's a lot of women there too that were equally excited. But I think Corvette is very much a guy's thing. We all were excited. There was a couple hundred of us there, and then they unveiled it, and they came out with a jet fighter on the video screen, and all sorts of really cool stuff. And out comes these three beautiful, like, fighter jet looking cars. We're like, oh, hell yeah.
So you'd say that, would it be fair to say you were a pretty damn lucky tiger yourself to be at this event?
I was one hell of a lucky tiger to be at that event. And, to punctuate that even more, my site's not the biggest site. My site's not the most car enthusiast site. But I had tons of people going, how'd you get an invite? But I think one of the things that really is cool about this Corvette is the fact that it's not just the latest one. That right. In the process of doing the unveiling video, they really brought us through the history of the car. And originally they wanted to have a mid-engine Corvette, but Corvette always very specifically had to be an affordable car for the masses. And until technology reached the point today, it really wasn't feasible to have a mid-engine car that could compete with these supercars that the average Joe could afford. And to be fair, it's still starting at $60,000, so it's not
Right.
like it's the car that you and I are going to be like, hey, let's go grab two of them and go go to Denny's tonight.
Well,
But
you just touched on something that I think is important to sort of explain to our viewers, to our Lucky Tiger viewers. This is a car, this is a mid-engine car. So why don't you just lay that out for those people who aren't car enthusiasts? What does that mean exactly?
sure. So for the most part, all of your cars have engines in front of the driver, and this means that you have a big hood that and the weight balance is on the front wheels of the car instead of being balanced equally between, or as equally as possible, between the rear and the front wheels. The other impact from a racing and performance perspective, which is what the Corvette's all about, is the fact that when you turn, having the weight up front is a detriment, and also more importantly, the visibility for the driver is impeded slightly because there's more hood space in front.
Right.
So when I haven't driven the Corvette C8, and I'm hoping, that my wonderful friends at Chevrolet, great PR team, uh, will bless me once again with a chance to drive it this fall. They're supposed to be launching sometime in November, December. Uh, but essentially, as you're going into a corner, you're going to be able to see a lot better. And they designed everything in there to maximize that, from the hood being shorter, being lower. The steering wheel, the top of the steering wheel is actually has a bigger window, so you can see the gauges, but it's not going to impact your view through the windshield. Lots of really cool, geeky kind of stuff that probably won't go into in here, but the impact is that it's not just the 2020 Corvette. It's truly a revolutionary and radical jump into the future. That, to be honest, the at $60,000, it's expensive for a lot of guys. But when you're comparing it and comping it to cars that are $200,000, you start realizing, holy cow, this is something that's really special, that is uniquely American. I mean, honestly, the Italians are never going to develop a Ferrari that you and I can afford to buy.
Right.
Maybe you, Rob.
Oh no! I'm an independent filmmaker. I'm always scrounging and scratching around for the cash. And if I had the money to spend on a new Corvette, I would, of course, probably put it into a film. But there is a way. What we need to do is get some product placement, and we got to make a movie where you can come on board as a producer, and we'll get them to give us Corvettes to use in the film that, of course, we'll be able to keep when we're done.
Yeah, to film the Lucky Tiger film.
Well, it's funny you bring up the fact that one of the things that when Lucky Tiger, I first started dealing with Lucky Tiger, one of the things I liked about Lucky Tiger was they actually started back in Kansas City in 1935, and so they're a venerable American company, and Chevy, the Corvette, being American muscle, it goes back. It doesn't go back that far, obviously, because who was making Corvettes in 1935? But I sort of grew up loving the Corvette, and of course the Stingray with the long nose. I mean, that really did have the classic California Stingray of the 70s. And it's funny, recently Warner Archive, the home video company, put out a movie that was made in 1978 called Corvette Summer. And it was the movie that Mark Hamill made right after Star Wars. It's a wonderful coming of age story, but Mark Hamill's a kid in high school who actually buys a wrecked Corvette with his auto class, and they rebuild it, and of course it gets stolen by this ring of car thieves that are based in Vegas. And Mark Hamill has to go out and find his Corvette, and it was sort of funny that did they plan this? Did they decide to put out Corvette Summer? Because it's been sort of a lost movie on high def, and they put it out like at the same time that Chevy was rolling out their new Stingray, because it is the Stingray. They call it the C8's the Stingray, isn't it?
Right, so the Stingray is a trim level within the Corvette family.
Right.
So the Stingray will be the base model, because honestly, nobody wants to buy a base model Corvette. But But the Stingray will be at I think it was 15. This is under 60,000, so I think it's 59,950 or something like
Right.
that. But then you'll have next year you have the Z06, and then you'll have the whatever else comes in this this generation. But within the Stingray, you'll have different packages as well. But yeah, the Stingray is essentially the baseline one, and with the Z something package, I can't remember what it is. You'll be able to do just insane 0 to 60. I think it's in 3 seconds or something insane like that. But honestly, even with the base at 60,000, it's one hell of a car. And to hear that I have friends that put money down on the GT 500 Mustang, that are Mustang fans, that are now going, maybe I should buy a Corvette instead. I mean, that's got to feel really good for the guys at Chevy, because that's like a lifelong Miller Lite drinker going like, the new Budweiser's pretty good.
Well, you know what? I really like the lines of the car. It's a beautiful car.
Beautiful.
I've loved the Corvettes they put out in the last couple of years, especially the black and white ones that look vaguely like, I call them Stormtrooper Corvettes, because they look like Stormtroopers from Star Wars. Like if there was an Imperial version of a car, it'd look like that Corvette. But this car has a real elegance to it. I mean, it looks like it's a monster car to drive and it's fast, but there's also something also sophisticated about it.
The very first time I saw the Corvette was last year. I'm driving up Leland Pass, and I think it was in Colorado, and down the road comes this mule. I looked at it for a fraction of a second. I'm like, that was a Corvette, but that wasn't a Corvette. And when you drive on the road at 12,000 feet, you really can't look very very closely.
Right.
But the reason why I bring that up is the fact that it's still very clearly a Corvette. Like if you look at it just for a fraction of a second, it still has that Corvette heritage, still the Corvette lines. But throughout the entire vehicle, what they've really worked to do is to make it something unique, make it something younger, make it something more aspirational.
Right.
And the frank response to that, when I kind of talked to some of the guys, is that the Corvette owners are dying. And we are younger at I'm 42, I think it is, and I don't know how old you are, but the guys
Older.
in their 40s that can finally afford to buy a Corvette,
Right.
We're dying. Our fathers and grandfathers, sadly, are the ones that when I think of Corvette owner, they're not getting younger.
Right.
And so by making this a much more youthful, much more aggressive, much more tech-looking vehicle, which I think it's spectacular. I did, to be honest, when I first saw the line, especially the inside, I thought the inside was absolutely hideous. But once I started realizing what it was, started sitting in it, it's spectacular. But they're really, really designing the entire package to be appealing to a younger buyer. Which, frankly, I don't know how many 22-year-olds have $60,000 to buy a car, but that may not be the issue. That may simply be that they want somebody that's 22-year-old to be wanting one,
right?
And for you and I to be like, hey, you know what? I want to be 22 years old again, and I'm buying the youth as opposed to buying my dad's car.
Right. Well, it's funny. We were talking about, like, to bring it back to the Lucky Tiger products. You and I were both talking about before we did this show that, like, with Lucky Tiger, it's not, one of the things we like about the product is it's not overbearing. Like if you use their facial scrub or you use their body scrub, it's not, you can use it with other things. It's got this light citrusy, it's a feel that not is traditionally known with male grooming products. And that's one of I think the great appeals to it. So it appeals to everybody. It's not like your dad's aftershave. It's, and this car, I really think the thinking has changed just because the world has changed. And what I felt the same way I felt when I first looked at this new Corvette. Even the old Corvettes from the 70s, it's like everybody looks at you. It was almost like, look at me. I've got a Corvette Stingray. And as a kid, you're like, well, that's the coolest thing in the world. But when you're in your 40s, maybe you don't want people to look at you in that way. I mean, it's mean and fast, and it looks like, it could take on all comers, but there's also an elegance to it.
I think you're absolutely right. It feels like you could go, if you were a F-35 pilot. I feel like you could jump in a Corvette and feel at home.
Right.
And honestly, that's how the Corvette started. So there's lots and lots of heritage with NASA astronauts and the original Corvettes.
Yeah, the
And,
Apollo 12 crew had matching Vettes,
yeah,
Stingrays.
and for years, there was actually, I don't know if it was an official partnership. It was an unofficial partnership anyhow with the Cocoa Beach Chevy dealer, where the astronauts, they go up to space, they get a Corvette, or
Right.
they buy a Corvette, and those rocket ships, while by today's standards are antiquated, and sadly, I think NASA has lost some of the glamour. But those were the fighter jet, those were the fighter jet cars. Those were the astronaut cars. Those guys were the guys who were going out there and doing stuff that no other man could dream of doing. And then they were getting into a Corvette. And then you and I, or probably our dads, would go and say, like, man, Buzz Aldrin has a Corvette. I want a Corvette.
No, I'd said that when I was a kid, man. I mean, I built a lot of model cars when I was a kid, and Corvettes were some of my favorite model cars, to build, getting like a monogram 1/24th scale Corvette model. And it was absolutely exactly what you just said. It was, and now it's a funny, it's a sort of a funny image that you've made. Well, not funny. I believe in it because now with SpaceX building their new moon rockets, and you've got Jeff Bezos' Blue Underground, and you've also got Richard Branson doing Virgin Galactic. They just opened their spaceport in New Mexico. Now is the time for Corvettes to be driven by astronauts all over the world again, because there's going to be more of them.
Yeah, unfortunately for Corvette, our leading astronaut right now is driving a Tesla.
Yeah.
But one of the things that really struck me on that generational tone as I started looking at things is, there will never be another NASA.
Right.
We've now have, like, you just ticked off like 3 or 4 different companies. There's never going to be another Walter Cronkite. We have a really diverse,
Right.
media landscape now. But one thing that still is somewhat monolithic is these giant blockbuster movies, and Corvette's nowhere. You have Fast and the Furious movies, you have the Marvel movies, you have these all across the pantheon, these really masculine, cool guys driving cool cars, and you have Audi, you have Porsche, you have Lamborghini, you have Ferrari. Corvette has been nowhere to be seen, except for one really marquee area in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.,
Right.
which is a joke on Corvette as being an old man's car. Now, granted, that car could fly and do some other really cool stuff, but
Right.
but it's this older, balding dude that's kind of the stick in the mud GI, government guy that his car is an old Corvette, and that's not the image that Corvette needs to sell Corvettes to guys.
No. That's
So-
why we have to make a movie, man. We have to get them to give us Corvettes for product placement and put it in the film so we can keep them afterwards.
And I hear if we say that 5 more times, the Corvette's going to say, "Yeah, I think we should do it."
We just have to get the money to actually make the movie to put the cars into. But I
Yeah.
mean, that's a good point. Why? It's funny going back to American companies. The fact that American car companies are doing innovation and they are being more competitive on the world stage. Why do you think that American muscle cars, I mean, everybody, of course, whether they want to get into Mustangs or things like that, how come, or what do you think that the Corvette needs to sort of bolster its image, to bring it more? Because look, when I saw that car, I was like, that's a damn sexy car. Like, I would drive one of those. Like, who wouldn't?
Yeah. I think the first thing was they had to have a car that everybody wanted.
Right.
And while I'm not gonna piss on the C8 or the C6, because frankly, those, having driven the C7 around a track up in Spring Mountain, it's a hell of a car. And there's nothing wrong with that car.
Right.
But it didn't have that feeling that this is something special.
Yeah.
And when I look at an Audi R8, or even the BMW, what is it, the i8? Both those cars just look cool. When I look at a Ferrari, it immediately says, I want this car.
Right.
And so they have a C8 now. And the C8 is spectacular. It's a little bit funky. It's a little bit weird. It's defining. It's not gonna stick. It's not gonna be something you mistake for anything else.
Right.
So they've got that, and the performance numbers they're gonna nail those. So, kind of like how the when the Hellcat first came out. Gosh, I don't know, was that 6 years ago or 7 years ago now? They're like 700 horsepower, and it's just insane numbers. And everybody wanted the Charger and the Challenger, and frankly, those were really ugly cars. But they were the kind of cars you said, hey, I gotta have this because I gotta have the car that's gonna make the loudest noise in the parking lot when I leave. And so, but they never really had the heritage, but behind like Corvette does. And
Right.
I think the GM guys are getting more savvy with movie placements because, to be honest, it wasn't a random, I don't know what you call it in the film industry, a random guy that just decided to make Iron Man's car in Audi.
Right.
Audi paid a lot of money for that.
No,
And I think Chevy is getting more sophisticated on that. Like if you look at Pretty Little Liars, I think it is, with the is it Buick or Cadillac that the main character drives, has been fabulously successful on the women's marketing. So there's no reason why they couldn't do the same thing with the Corvette.
Yeah, I mean, GM did a good job with the Transformers movies.
Yeah,
in
exactly.
the movies, the Transformers all turned into GM cars, so it's just this
Unfortunately,
is
it was the Camaro.
yeah.
The Camaro kind of blows.
Yeah, and they need to step up that game. Maybe the next Transformers movie after Bumblebee can have a Corvette in it. But there's something, to me when you hear the word Corvette, it's such an indelible American brand.
Yeah.
There's just something about, and I think California, because when I was growing up, it was either Florida, like you said, with the astronauts, or it was California. It was one of the two. I mean, I always saw it's girls in bikinis, it's sunsets, it's drinking beer on the beach, turning on
golf.
your head, golf, absolutely. Palm Springs, driving out to the desert. The Palm Springs of the late 60s. Kind of like the swinging Hepcats, the Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra, era of the Rat Pack, the 50s going into the 60s. I mean, that's Corvette's always said that to me, and I feel like that's what it needs to do is reestablish itself as a lifestyle brand. Like if you're a Lucky Tiger guy, you're a man who wants to look good and feel great. What better way than to do it in a Corvette? Maybe they should team up.
Maybe I think that's number 4. So we need one more.
Right.
To get that free.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, I'll tell you, you've got your fresh skin you got your Lucky Tiger products on. You got the top down. Are they making a convertible Corvette?
I don't know what they call it, but the hard top shell that can be removed.
Oh, okay.
And that can be placed in the trunk. However, one of the things that they kept reiterating during the show is the fact that the Corvette can still carry 2 golf clubs. So, two bags of golf
yeah.
clubs.
I mean, as long as when you slam on the accelerator, like you said, it's a fast car it's got a monster pickup and what you said 0 to 60 in 3 seconds.
I think that's what it is. Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. That's I'm right there with you.
Yeah. So and probably I'm a big guy. So one of the things I was really nervous about that when I looked at the Corvette, and frankly, I had this last year with the C7 trip that I did. I was like, damn it, what if I get to Vegas in this track, and I'm not able to fit in the car? and that's that's a major issue. Like I'm a big guy. I'm more of a truck kind of guy, and but I said, what, I'll do it. If I can't fit, then it is what it is. But I was able to fit in the C7. I felt like I was able to fit easier into the C8 than I was into the previous generation because they've actually dropped the rails a little bit on the bottom of the car, and so you're able to kind of just slide in better.
Right.
The visibility on this car when you're looking at it, like, and I haven't driven it, but I've sat in it, is spectacular as well. And frankly, the headroom was pretty good too because there's probably a lot of guys that are tall that have said, I can't drive a Lamborghini, I can't drive a Ferrari. I can't drive a McLaren because of the headroom.
Right.
They have legitimately tried to make this car accessible to Americans, and that's special. And I really want to make sure that that I reward them with the credit for that, because that's appreciated. I mean, one day maybe I'll have $60,000 to buy the car, but right now I just have a press fleet that I look forward to borrowing from.
Well, I guess to sort of wrap this up, what philosophically do you think that Americans have the car culture? Has the car culture ever gone away? It seems to me like in our age of social media and in all of that, it seems like a lot of that open road summer, listening to the Eagles or America or Bread, album oriented rock from the 70s. I mean, I live close to the Ventura Highway. Ventura Highway in the summertime.
Yeah.
And to me that screamed Corvette. Is there a way, or do you think that has America lost its car culture? Can it ever get it back? Or was that part of a part of time, a part of history that we can't have anymore? I mean, as these brands reinvent themselves, you made a point that Corvette is really trying to compete now on the modern stage. Are we going to get American car culture back the way it used to be, or is that a pipe dream of mine?
I, you know, I would like to say otherwise, but I think the car culture of the 50s and 60s and 70s is gone. The kids today, and I hate, God, I sound old, but the kids today simply don't look at machines the way we did. Their world is a digital world,
Right.
and it's I'm not making a value judgment. It's different. The fact is the kids today are getting their driver's licenses later. They're less inclined to buy cars. They're more inclined to live in urban areas. They want scooters, not cars, but that doesn't mean that the Corvette's ever going to go away. That doesn't mean that the cars are going to ever go away, at least not in the next 50, 60 years.
Right.
It's more of just a niche. I mean, one of the things that was really generationally interesting at this event was when they announced that the Corvette will not have a manual transmission. A lot of people freaked the hell out.
Wow.
It's like, I'm not going to buy a Corvette. Well, the reality is the dual clutch automatic transmission is faster to shift and deliver more performance power than you could as a human. I appreciate a manual transmission like anybody else does because I like pinball myself.
Right.
But pinball is a dead thing. It doesn't mean I can't enjoy it.
Right.
Doesn't mean it's not niche. Doesn't mean it won't continue in some form. But the car culture of having your first experience in the back seat of a of a car doesn't exist anymore, and,
Right.
and it's not going to exist in the future.
Not when you have Tinder. You can swipe
Yeah.
left or swipe right. You don't even have to. I mean, it's everything is so much easier.
But it's more fundamental than that. Like when I turned 16, I wanted a car because it represented freedom.
Yeah.
Represented a chance to be out of my parents' house, to go where I wanted to. If I wanted to get in trouble, it was my opportunity to get into trouble. If I wanted to be able to simply, help out my dad by running to Home Depot to get some lumber, for something, then it was my opportunity to be a man.
Right.
I don't think the kids today have that same perception. But who knows? I mean, maybe as they get older, maybe they realize that scooters kind of are terrible, that they'll start wanting cars again. I don't know.
Well, you do make a really good point. I mean, cars. I think now people see, especially younger people, see cars as more utilitarian. With the rise of rideshare, with Uber and Lyft, I mean, cars are a tool to get from point A to point B. Whereas we grew up in a world where cars were a destination. Owning the car, being in a car, having a car, driving a car was destination in and of itself. That was a place we wanted to get to. Was car ownership. We wanted to get behind the wheel of a car. And now when you can use an app and somebody will show up and pick you up, it's really sort of demystified the car itself. And I think what they need to do is sort of, I mean, maybe the Corvette is, this new release of a Corvette is the beginning of the remystification of the automobile in a way.
Maybe but to that point, one of the things that they've done we've already talked about making it sexier, making it, hitting the numbers. We've talked about making the various pieces. One of the things that they've done to also appeal to this new generation is they have tons and tons and tons of options.
Oh,
One of the big trends that the kids like, and frankly I like it too, but you see much more in cars that are millennial cars.
right.
Is that they have, I think, 3 different seat options. They've got like 6 different versions of the brake caliper colors. You can have hundreds and hundreds of configuration options. Actually, there's a whole site that Chevy put up so you can create your ultimate Corvette. And I think that's really cool because that comes down to personalization. That comes down to what millennials are really wanting.
Right.
So there's enough millennials. And I have a good friend of mine who. I don't know what he does, but he's in his mid-30s and he's got a bunch of Mustangs and he lives in Temecula, and he just put money down on a Corvette, even though he was a Mustang devotee, because he's a racing fan. He loves cars,
Right.
and so it's piquing interest in unexpected marketplaces. And I think if anything can cut through. Then the Corvette has a much better chance than what's being offered right now by Dodge and Ford. But will it make an impact on the larger market? I don't think so. I don't think you're going to have the average 25-year-old kid go like, heck yeah, I wanted a scooter, but now I want a Corvette.
Right.
Like that's not going to change. But that niche is going to is for the guys who want performance, who love the speed culture. It's definitely going to have an impact, and I think we're already seeing it if you look around on YouTube.
Well, it's interesting too. I mean, to bring it back to Lucky Tiger as a brand, they're also rebranding themselves as more of a younger and more to have a greater appeal to younger people. And it's funny. I mean, I wasn't aware of, say, Lucky Tiger products until I started working with them, but they really they really are a great product. And it's certainly made me feel more youthful using their skincare products. It's made me actually want to have facial hair, and I think these new the way that car companies are trying to reinvent themselves, it's kind of the same thing. A lot of these really American brands that really go all the way back, all the way through the latter half of the 20th century, and how they're trying to reinvent themselves for the modern age, I think is actually quite inspiring, and it's nice to see that Corvette, that Chevy is going to keep doing that and make the Corvette, bring the Corvette back. I like the fact that we live in a world where Corvettes are badass again.
Yeah.
I mean, I think don't we all want to live in a world where things are cool as opposed to not being cool?
Well, and this is probably a conversation for another time. We can kind of just riff on it while we're drinking some American craft beer or whatever. But it feels good to be an American.
Right.
Because I don't want to go and say, like, well, what kind of fancy car do I want? Oh, do I want an Italian sports car and grab a Lamborghini or Ferrari? Do I want a British car? Do I want what's Bugatti? Is Bugatti Danish or Swiss or something? But I don't want to. I don't want to look somewhere else. I want to say, F yeah, I'm an American. I don't want to apologize. I want to just have the best, the fastest, the loudest. And quite frankly, something that I can afford. And I think that's something that really the Corvette has democratized horsepower.
I love that.
Because the Italians would never make a car that could touch this car with the intention of selling it to a lot of people.
Right.
But that's America, man. And that's what makes this country cool as shit. I hope I'll be able to say that with Lucky Tiger.
No, you can. You can say that.
It feels good to be an American and to stop apologizing.
Right. Well, James, I don't think there's any better way to wrap this podcast up than with that sentiment. So thank you for that. Once again, I want to thank you for speaking with us. Aside from your great website, mantripping.com, can people find you on the web at other places, and where can people contact you directly?
Sure. So I'm at mantripping on Instagram, on Twitter, Facebook. Feel free to maybe I shouldn't give my normal one, but feel free to just add me on just / James Hills on Facebook too. I love talking with you guys, and if you have any questions on places to go for Guys Week at a man-cation, or just ideas on what you'd like to see more men into, feel free to ping me.
Thank you, James, for being here for episode 4 of Living the Lucky Tiger Life, and we look very forward to catching up with you again. Talk to you soon.